Hey everybody, welcome back to the World of Tanks Garage with Hachiman. Here I'm bringing the garage overview of the M6, part of the series that people have asked me for, seeing just a general overview of every tank. The M6 heavy tank is one that Wargaming almost got right. And what I mean by that is that it in the tech tree, it's tier 6, and it comes directly from the T1 Heavy, which it should. The M6 was the first heavy tank accepted into service by the U.S. Army during World War II, 1942 off the top of my head. Now, comparing this to the T1, outside of my camo, you can see these tanks are virtually identical. Well, the M6 was a direct derivative of the T1 Heavy. Um, what the U.S. military wanted some changes made to the T1, and they did eventually accept this M6 into service. However, not one fought in combat. I think roughly 200 were made. There are still a few out there on various bases here or there. This tank was used predominantly for lack of a better word, for propaganda purposes. It was used at war bonds drives, doing things like crushing lines of cars, stuff like that. Go American muscle. We need money to fund building war machines like this. Um, the M6. Well, the reason I say Wargaming almost got it right was the M6 heavy tank was never equipped with anything more than a 76mm gun. And in World of Tanks, they allow you to equip it with a 90mm M3, which is the gun from, say, the M36 Jackson and the uh, M26 Pershing. The M6 never had a 90mm gun. If it had had a 90mm gun, they'd probably would have wanted to put this tank into service. Again, in addition to being virtually identical, another thing, the actual M6 had two guns. It had a 76mm right here where the main gun is, and this little spot right here was a coaxial 37mm anti-tank gun, basically the gun from the M3 Stuart. Um, Interesting array. There's not many tanks in history with two main guns like that. The Maus, of course, was one. Uh, the Maus had a 75 millimeter as its secondary coaxial gun. 37 millimeters in 1942 was still adequate to take out a lot of tanks that the Germans were driving at the time. Until, of course, the Panthers and the Tigers became more prevalent. Anyway, um, your similarities on this tank to the T1 Heavy. Overall, this tank has more armor, though the turret is identical. 102 on the front, 83 side, 83 rear, and big, flat side and rear turret. Frontal turret, 102 millimeters, thick American gun mantlet, very hard to penetrate, even by a lot of other Tier 6 tanks. The frontal hull is 102 millimeters, which is a 19 millimeter improvement over the T1 Heavy. And again, you've got this rounded spot where the upper plate meets the lower plate, and you've got a little bit of backward sloping right here, but not a lot. 44 on the side, 41 on the rear. Just like the T1, do not get flanked in this tank. Do not let them have your side. It's a very high profile tank. Tanks will have plenty of opportunities to put shots right through this area, and you do not want that to happen. And if they get your turret at tier 6, they're going to pen the side of this turret. I mean, it has no slope on it whatsoever. It is perfectly big and flat. This is a big tank. However, just like the T1 heavy tank, you angle this armor, and you've got a whole different ballgame. 102 millimeters on this hull at this angle suddenly just became 140. And this 44 right through here at this angle is about 100. You go here, and this hull is substantially higher, but the front hull rather, but the side hull starts becoming easily penetrable. You end up with something around 75 millimeters right here, which On rare occasion, most people are going to pen. On rare occasion, they'll bounce, but that it's not going to be much trouble. Just like the T1 Heavy, you got to keep them in front of you, and you got to keep your armor angled. Tank is very agile, 35 kph top speed, 25 traverse. Think of this tank as just like the T1 Heavy, but more of it. Okay. It is, against, say, a KV-85. The KV-85 definitely has more agility. But really what makes this tank what it is the gun. The gun that does not exist on this tank, the 90mm Tier 7 M3. This weapon, with 160mm of penetration, average, 243 on premium ammo, and 240 average damage. 243 penetration with premium ammo. Why don't you just shoot at the front of Tier 8 tanks if you're going to have that much pen? Because that's what it can do. 160mm of penetration will pen any Tier 6 tank in the game in the front, as long as you don't hit the absolute worst spot. This gun should have no trouble penetrating anything you shoot at. Assuming you're shooting at the right part of the enemy tank. It is used on the T-20. It is used on the T-29, though it's not the top gun for the T-29. It's used on the Pershing. This is a very powerful weapon. And it's even the starting weapon for the M46 Patton. It's pretty accurate. Not terribly, but accurate enough. .38 dispersion, which makes it more accurate than the 3-inch guns used on the Tier 6 American mediums. And with a 2.3 second aiming time, it can easily aim quickly before it's ready to fire. Rate of fire is pretty good, 7.89 rounds per minute. You can see my crew on this guy is not quite 100%. 98% plus the bonus for the commander and the vents at 113. I've got a rammer and vents, which I just said that, giving me an actual reload time of 6.47 seconds. So not quite 10 rounds per minute with an average damage of 240. That's some very excellent DPM for a Tier 6 heavy tank. And this is where you can beat the KV-85 and the KV-2. Everyone thinks the KV-85 and the KV-2 are such OP tanks, but they're really not. When the KV-2 takes that shot, you've got 20 seconds. If you both fire at the same time, you're going to get 3 more shots before he gets his second. 4 shots at 240 damage is all you need to kill a KV-2. Okay. Same thing for the KV-85. His reload time isn't 20 seconds, it's closer to 14. Off the top of my head. However, he has no prayer of one-shotting you. He needs 3 shots to kill you, and in the time it takes him to get 3 shots, you, on the other hand, are going to have, off the top of my head, you're going to have 8 on him. So if you haven't killed him by then, you're doing something wrong. Well, Hachi, a KV-2 can one-shot me. Well, he can, but only if you give him this side or this rear. If he hits your tracks with that 152, he's not going to one-shot you. He'll do a lot, and he'll try to take your tracks off. But if he hits you here, not here, but right here, he will probably one-shot you. Anywhere else, you're not going down with one hit. You keep your front to him, and you'll absorb a lot of the damage from that shell. And heaven forbid he's firing AP. So again, quickly, M6, just like the T1 heavy tank, but a lot more of it, except for the gun, which is absolutely fantastic. It's really a fun tank to play when played properly, and of course it leads to the best Tier 7 heavy in the game as far as I'm concerned, and we'll talk about that in the next one. Please, guys, like the video if you found this helpful, and subscribe for more. See you on the T29.